Welcome to Imagination TV. My name is Kalani, and what makes me who I am is my ability to fail fast and have fun while doing it. Now, welcome to Imagination University Alliance Partner Special, where we meet a global network of change organizers forging unlikely connections to tackle the biggest challenges that are facing our planet today and tomorrow. Now, today we're exploring building bridges and what happens when we build bridges etched with the DNA of human connection. And on these bridges, we come together and we redesign the world, the way the world works.
And my name is Rhian Miller, and what makes me who I am is my willingness to keep turning up and my commitment to building bridges. I believe building bridges helps us create a fairer world, and through bringing people together that are of different races, ages, connections, wealth, and nations. And AIME was built off of these unlikely connections that were forged on these bridges that have been built over years and years. And, we're fortunate enough to have unlikely connections, and these come with stories that introduce heroes that we haven't seen, and that paint the potential that we all have. And we have unlikely connections with knowledge for freedom of the mind, and unlikely connection with mentors for a two-way exchange. And most importantly, unlikely connections with a network, which is a new home of exchange and opportunities, wealth, and ideas. And all of these unlikely connections started on a bridge. So we're going to play a quick video, and then we'll introduce the guests on today's panel.
Let's imagine
what a free and just world looks like. Let's imagine
a university free for all,
with no paywalls to higher order thinking for anyone, anywhere.
Let's imagine
a social network for good.
A bridge for us to come together and redesign the way the world works.
Let's imagine what happens when we tell the kids at the back of the class,
we see you.
There is a generation of kids just like you.
Let's imagine school students, university students,
teachers, executives, citizens
coming together to work on a curriculum designed for a future that we hope to build. Now, imagine.
It's happening right here. And you're invited.
Welcome to Imagination University, brought to you by AIME, the Imagination Factory.
Applications are open now.
Alrighty, let's jump straight into it. Barron, could you please introduce yourself? I suppose your journey up until this point, and how you met AIME.
Yeah, thanks, Rhi. So I, for the last 7 years, have lived in New York City, where I started a creative agency called Convicts, and we create documentary films. We create campaigns for brands, and along the way, we had the privilege of sharing an office space with the fine people at AIME as part of their hooded hustle when they were rallying mentors and inspiring people to get on a plane and come to Australia for the first festival of mentoring. So when you talk about like unlikely connections, it was probably a likely unlikely connection. We were an Australian company, and then there was these hooded hustlers coming over to America. We shared an office space and really kind of like connected a long way from home, and have remained friends ever since. And when you talk about we're a creative studio, what I really like about unlikely connections is unlikely connections really lead to like new creativity, because that diversity of ideas or that energy that you're not accustomed to is going to make your brain go in a new direction. And so I absolutely loved our time that we got to share those office spaces, and it's led to a lot more like this right now. So thanks.
Thanks so much for taking the time to join the call, and most importantly, be a part of the journey for the last 2 or 3 years now, Baz. Calum, I'd love you to jump in, introduce yourself, And yeah, how has Bloomberg and AIME kind of been able to come together over the last couple years to form an unlikely connection?
Great. Yeah. Well, first off, thank you very much for having me. As you can probably see, I'm in the office today, the first time in a few months after we came out of lockdown here in New South Wales. I work for Bloomberg. We're kind of the opposite of actually Barron. So we're a New York-based business, but we've been working here in Australia for the past 27 years now. And for the last couple of years, I've been involved in our Reconciliation Action Plan, and that was how we first started working with AIME. And you've been a great partner for us, and really great to sort of get involved in things like this, and be part of something which we feel like we need to get more involved with. Given we've had a short time here in Australia, but we want to be part of the important important initiatives.
And now, Calum, it's always fascinating to me the people that we get on here, and you work at Bloomberg, and you are in finance and tech, and then on the flip side, we've got somebody who's in the arts, and it's just such chalk and cheese. But when it comes to building bridges, how would you build bridges, and how have you found yourself building bridges? And I imagine that Bloomberg's quite a corporate place. So how would you find yourself building bridges there?
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, I think we are, and certainly, like, me being in the office today, it does remind me just how sort of corporate life my day-to-day is. But I think one of the things that kind of I've been reflecting on, maybe this is something that's happened through COVID as well, is that the systems that are in place that mean that we work in the certain way that we do, and we interact with certain same types of people and organizations that we have done for many years. I don't think that has to be the case. So maybe building bridges for me, and sort of trying to get involved with a different community than we've necessarily been working with in the past is a good thing for us. That's kind of my take on it.
That's awesome, Calum. Barron, when we talk about these unlikely connections that make a difference or create an impact in the world, I imagine at Convicts, you guys are troublemakers for a fairer world. So you've had the opportunity to meet lots of diverse people from all sorts of backgrounds. How do you think we use these unlikely connections or these bridges that we build to be able to reduce inequity or inequality?
It's a great big question, Rhi, and one that I spend every now and then have a long conversation with your founder Jack about, and he's been fighting for this his mission since starting AIME, and it's a tough question, because when I think about it, it's like it starts with each individual, right? It's like each individual has to kind of like want to take the action. You can't force anyone to come and be part of a mentoring progress. You can't force anyone to like come and want to be a mentor. People have to kind of like do the work from the start. And so a lot of what I've been talking to about Jack is like, well, how do we inspire people? How do we like be the best example of a human we can be, and then let that inspire other people? And I see that Jack does that at AIME. I see the people he inspires. I see the talent coming up that like have been inspired by him. So I think like when it comes to it, you've just got to like be the best kind of like individual you can, and the best example, and then just wait for people to kind of like come up and take the torch from you, I guess.
Yeah,
Barron, can I just say, I think what you just said is spot on. I was having this conversation with someone recently just around the way that I described it was integrity. I feel like the most powerful thing that someone can do to influence you is that over time, you just know that, this person, they do what they say. And, I think for me, like, the mentors and, things that I've had in, my career have been the ones that have shown that integrity over time. That makes a big difference to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sort of link between, building connections and building bridges, as this episode is framed, but also to do that and to reduce inequity is something that is sort of becoming to the forefront of society, and something that's really interesting, at least to view sort of, I'm part of AIME, but to view from sort of a like outside of a corporate world or a big organization. And with that though, I will ask Calum, when in Bloomberg, how does your organization build bridges? I imagine that finance and tech and is all about connections, and so is most of the corporate world. So how would you find that your organizations builds those bridges?
Yeah. So it sounds like, you know a little bit about what we do, but basically, think of Bloomberg as we're the sort of social network for financial markets, right? All the the traffic, the communication that happens across the different organizations of financial markets, a lot of it happens through our platform. And we're a little bit different as an organization because we're a private company. So our sort of our owner and founder, Mike Bloomberg, given sort of basically what he's been able to do over the last 35 years has created this sort of network, which has been very successful. But then as a business as well, we also are heavily involved with things like philanthropy. So things like health and education, and and some of the things that maybe you wouldn't associate being priorities for a big corporate company like ourselves. We're actually all encouraged to get involved with. So we run a massive program internally of making sure that our employees are all involved in these types of things, and it kind of gets you to sit back and think about what really matters as well, which I think that's a good thing to have happening in the corporate space.
Totally. Hey, Calum, I'd love to ask a follow-up question on that, which is what's an unlikely connection that you've made in your life that has helped you to become a better person and to want to be able to create change?
And as much as we love AIME, you can't say AIME.
I think I mean there's so many, right? Like I feel like as much as hey, a great plan and sort of a strategy and all those things that it helps, I kind of feel like a lot of things are just luck and right time, right place. Just the most the recent thing that I've been doing, so I chair this reconciliation action plan that we've had in place for the last couple of years, and through that one of our other one of our other partners is the Go Foundation, which is co-founded by Adam Goods. And I mean, unreal, right? Like I've got to spend a lot of time with him and hear his story, and and obviously at the same time watching things on documentaries about him and and all the amazing things he's been involved with. So I never thought that would be something I'd be involved with. And it's interesting sort of how those those kind of twists and turns take in a different direction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think when we talk about those kinds of struggles that people go through, particularly in Adam's case, Barron, I'm not sure if you're totally across Aussie football, but I'd love to know in these kinds of situations when people experience hardships or, I suppose, being excluded from society, how do we then build a bridge or an unlikely connection to support and to help other people?
Totally. I'm a big AFL fan actually, and I love the Adam Goods documentary made by his Shark Island Productions. It was one of the best ones going around. And thanks, Calum, for the work you guys and the support you do for his foundation too. That's awesome. I think like Kalani, like you kind of nailed it before, where you said like there's big businesses have to be involved. We're helping with inequity these days, or big businesses have to be seen as like doing good for the world. And Calum, Bloomberg's a great example of what you guys are doing. But I think like every business these days has to have some sort of plan of how they're making the world a better place. And I think that consumers are helping to drive that as well. I think that consumers are helping to like put their money behind businesses that are making the world a better place. And then it's in the hands of those businesses to kind of like make sure that they're actually doing what they say as well. And so, yeah, it can range from everything, and every business is diverse in the way that they can help. You know, we make films, documentary films. So it's like, well, how do we inject a little bit of better world into all of our films? You know, how do we make sure that people are properly represented in our films? You know, in the same way that I'm sure Bloomberg has a different set of ways that they can approach inequity or approach, you know, helping people to get up from the bottom up. So yeah, I think it's diverse, and pretty much you don't really have a choice these days in business. You've got to be making the world a better place.
Yeah, Barron, I agree. I think you know, not having a choice, I think that's, you know, if there's any good that has come out of things like the pandemic, I think it has been a realization from the corporate world that, look, you know, people are going to vote with their feet, right? So if you want to attract good talent, you know, if you want to be successful as a business, you know, these are things that, you know, you have to genuinely care about, right? And I think I don't know, the world that we live in at the moment, it sort of seems like we're in this sort of pivotal decision making. Like, you know, for, you know, one of the things, you know, I guess that, you know, most people are starting to care more and more about is climate, and it'll be interesting to see at the end of this week, right? I think there's this big meeting that's happening in Glasgow where all the politicians and, you know, all the different, you know, sort of stakeholders are gonna get involved, and, you know, hopefully, you know, make some good decisions off the back of that. Yeah, it feels like we're in a sort of important moment in history right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're in that sort of pivotal point where we're shifting from, you know, sort of older views to newer views, and it's something that we're seeing, and it's developing, and especially through the pandemic. You know, and you touched on that this is your first day back in the office, so, you know, I'm not sure exactly how long you might have been in lockdown there, but when you think of, you know, sort of building connections and building strong relationships, how would you do that, and how have you guys? I'm going to pitch the question to both of you guys. How have you guys done that? Built strong relationships and connections to people digitally?
I'll talk about it. Yeah, I'll talk about it from like putting my corporate, you know, kind of hat on initially. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, we had to do, you know, during the lockdown is pivot very quickly to try and, you know, retain those relationships and connections as much as possible. So, you know, be that, you know, doing, you know, great things like this, right? You know, so trying to bring people together on events and online forums and all the rest of it to try and kind of keep that, you know, social interaction, you know, happening as much as possible. And I think, you know, sort of you know, like we're sort of on some, you know, virtual technology today. Trust me, I've used pretty much every version there is out there right now to try and, you know, connect with you know, different people across, you know, across lots of different time zones and, you know, lots of different, you know, parts of the world. So, you know, that's been kind of what we've done as a company. I think for me personally, right, you know, my family are spread around the world. And I think, you know, it's, you know, one of the things that's been really tough is just, yes, trying to stay connected, right? I haven't seen some of them for years now. And, you know, that's really hard. So I think, you know, making a big effort to try and, you know, keep up with, you know, the people that you care about has been, you know, it's been something that I've been trying to get better at.
And we'll throw
another good.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, another good question, Kalani. You know, being in film production, it was really tough for us, and we were all based in New York when the pandemic hit. And we kind of got our team together and we said, sorry, what does everyone want to do? And everyone said, well, let's keep making. Let's make from our bedrooms. And we continued to, you know, stay connected virtually, but we continued to make, and we put out a few films during the pandemic. One particular one that struck a moment in New York City, and it kind of went viral, I guess, but it was one of those moments that made people kind of feel safe and feel like everything was going to be okay. So I feel like in that respect, we were able to use our unique kind of position to create something that was still like bringing people together. And then we ended up getting to make a documentary about the COVID pandemic inside Mount Sinai Hospital. So that was a total different set of challenges where we were shooting, during April and May during the pandemic when New York was the epicenter. So that was really interesting. And now we have this piece of film that will be a moment in history that kind of captured that. And there wasn't many other crews around the world shooting inside hospitals. So despite the kind of like the danger to our team and the kind of the risk, it was well worth it, because now we have this piece of content that we'll be able to show our kids and show what life was like, inside a hospital during those days. So hopefully in that way, keeping people kind of like giving people an insight into what it was like while everybody's stuck at home.
Yeah, it was totally amazing, Barron. And I remember just kind of watching that on repeat as it came out, and truly made people feel connected in such a time of feeling disconnected and separated, and like the world was this evil place that, this virus was spreading through. And I think through those kinds of impacts that we can have on community and on individuals, it really shows, I suppose, the humanity at the end of the day. And I suppose the reason why we all wake up every single day and do the job that we do. And, like for myself and for Kalani, that's to mentor high school students here in Australia and abroad, and to support people to be able to do that. And you guys both individually have such an awesome, I suppose, work environment where you're able to experience the world, the good, the bad, the ugly, and then see the light at the end of the tunnel. And at AIME last year, we launched IMAGI-NATION University, and a place for everyone to be able to come together to meet those, I suppose, from the other side of the bridge that you previously wouldn't have ever come into contact with before, and to really, I suppose, start to forge these bridges from corporate and tech and finance to Indigenous high school kids in Australia, and from, New York and the epicenter of the pandemic to really just identifying the humanity and people. And that was the point of the episode today, which was to, I suppose, get you guys on to chat about your connection to AIME, connection to these bridges we build, and then most importantly, the kind of future that we want to create together. And so I'd love to kind of wrap this episode up on how can we as AIME and as human beings build bridges with Convicts and with Bloomberg to be able to create a fairer world for all to be able to live in this year, next year, and for the foreseeable future.
That's a pretty big question to go. Maybe before I answer that, just want to say, Barron, all the work that you and the team have been doing, it's amazing, mate. And kudos to you guys for being there in the front lines, right? That's it puts what we do in perspective for me, is some of the things that others have to. So really appreciate that. I think with regards to what AIME are doing, I think this is the initiatives that you guys run are amazing anyway. So just keep doing more of the same. I think you talked a bit about then and I guess sort of back to the title of this session about building bridges. My personal view is that most people are good people, and I think through the pandemic again we've sort of seen that, right? Like be that the connections that I've made with my neighbors that I probably know way more about now than I ever had done in the past. And I feel like just making more of those connections with people, and sort of really putting yourself out there, that that does help, and it helps to reduce that inequality perhaps that is there. Unless you kind of do something about the system, it's just going to continue in the same way. So that's kind of one of my personal goals for the future. But I think the work that AIME is doing is is great.
I'll jump in. Yeah, thanks, Calum. And it's awesome to be on calls like this. We're a real little company, and you guys are a big company. We're pretty much at far end of the spectrum, and it's so cool that you guys take the time to jump on something like this with AIME. And I know you're probably really busy, but just to hear things like your reconciliation program and things like that, it's awesome to hear. So right back at you. But I was thinking about this building bridges episode, and I live in Nowra. I moved back to Nowra from New York, and the Shoalhaven River, beautiful river, but they're building a new bridge across a literal bridge. And my 95-year-old grandfather has been going down every day and watching the progress. And I kind of get all the updates from him, and you can see the updates. And to build a bridge across the river, they actually build a whole, they make new land. So they put they lay a huge foundation out to the pylons, and then they build the pylons. And I never knew that's how bridges were made. So learning how bridges were made. But I think what the metaphor here is that you've got to lay a foundation. And so if you're building a bridge, you've got to do the work yourself. You've got to, and I kind of touched on this at the start, but it all comes from the individual, right? And so doing the work yourself and being the best example of kind of like a human you can be, and being a leader and inspiring other people. Like I'm sure, Calum, at your organization, there's people who kind of like look up to the work you're doing. And I hopefully that happens with me at Convicts. And it's the same with you guys, Kalani and Rhian and Jade, just being the best example of a human you can be, and letting the rest and the team follow. So that would be my advice for building bridges for all. And or we could just get into building real bridges. Become engineers.
Well, I definitely don't think I'll be building any bridges as an engineer anytime soon, considering I'm doing a communication degree. But but with that, but just before we wrap up, do you guys have any questions for each other? No? All right, go on. No dramas. Okay, so we've talked about a lot today. We really have. We've built bridges. We've laid that foundation, as Barron was saying, and we've built those connections. And I think, if anything, what Calum said really struck with me was just to expect the best in people, and it'll be. You'll go very far. And when you're actually laying the foundations and you're doing the work and you're inspiring others and you're being the best example of a human that you can be, and you're expecting the best in people, and if you're acting with integrity and you show that importance and that excitement, and if you make sure that what you are saying and what even the most powerful things that people say can do influence to either that's to you or to somebody else, you're always building those connections and building those bridges. So I'm going to throw it over to the audience. Let us know in the chat line, like, what did you learn? What are your guys' final thoughts? Are you going to lay that foundation to do the work, to be a leader? Are you going to continue to expect the best in people? Are you going to go and sort of go out there and like, I just love that analogy from Barron, was laying the foundation and building those bridges, and it's so fitting. So thank you all for coming on the show and showing and sharing your knowledge around building bridges to education equity. Thank you guys so much, and thank you all to the audience.
Thanks so much for having us.